So far in our game of Snakes and Ladders, we have a board. So let's go back to our mind map and have a look around. I suppose the next thing that's worth dealing with is actually our shortcuts, so our snakes and our ladders. So I need to think for a bit and say, how are we going to store the information about the snakes and the ladders, those shortcuts? Are we going to kind of tie that information to a square? So we have our square constructor and let the square know if it is a snake head or a ladder head, and then just send the player to a destination. Are we actually going to hard code that somewhere in here? Or are we going to have some other type of data structure running that's going to deal with them independently? I think what I'll do is I'll just import the information, the data. So this is the game so far. So we actually need to keep track of the snakes and the ladders. Now the question is, they're pretty much exactly the same thing. They're just a shortcut, just of a different type. So I could store all that data as one data type and then keep track of each point in that, or just have a snakes list and a ladders list. So for this application, I think I'm just going to have a snakes list and a ladders list. Even though it's slightly inefficient, I think it'll just be easier. So I went through and I found and set up some snake positions. So I'm going to create this as a const, call it snakes, and I'm going to make it an object. Okay, I'll do the same thing with ladders, and I'll get to format it properly in a second. So this is also going to be an object. Okay, and so each of these, I need to take these, so Control F, we'll find, I'm going to turn them into a column. So I'm just going to change each one individually. Great, and a comma at the end of each one. Okay, so that's my snakes data and my ladders data. And so just leave a comment. The snakes and ladders are the same. Data, it stores the head first, the head, or the starting point, and the second value is the end point. Okay, so they're my snakes and ladders. So I think I probably want to be able to draw them. Okay, so like I did with the square, I'm going to create a class called a shortcut. And into the shortcut, I'm going to feed the snakes and the ladders data. Okay, so make a new file called a shortcut.js. So class shortcut. I'm just going to have a constructor. And the constructor is just basically going to say what type of thing it is. So this.type equals type. It's also going to have a start location and an end. So this.start will start, and this.end equals end. Now I'm going to get it to draw itself. So draw from this start to this end. So how am I going to get that? Well, each of those start and end locations is in fact, or can be mapped effectively to a square based on the number of the square. So I'm going to make a function here that is going to return the midpoint. So midpoint. It's going to return an object. It's going to have an x coordinate, which is going to be this.x plus this.width divided by 2. and a y value, which is going to be this dot y plus this dot height divided by 2. So I'm just going to be able to have this method that I'm going to call on square 7, and it's going to work out its midpoint and send it back to whoever wanted to know its midpoint. So that means the snakes and the ladders are going to start at the midpoint of whatever square they are associated with. Okay, so shortcut.js, shortcut. Cool. Oh, I made an error here. These are all off by 1. Because they're all off by 1. Because they're based on an array starting at 1. So I'm going to have to go back and drop them all by 1. Oops. That's what happens. Okay, so when they draw, it's going to have to get the start and the end. So do I want to call that every time? No. Okay, so this dot sx start x equals. Now over here, I called this the square list of this dot start dot midpoint dot x. And this dot start dot y is going to be the square list of the starting point, and it's going to be the midpoint y. Cool. I'll copy them. And make a point end. Should we call it start y? This should be end x. Okay, so it goes to the square list, finds whichever is the end square, goes into that and gets the midpoint and returns the x coordinate of that. Same for the end here. We'll get the end point, the midpoint of that, and the y value. Okay, and we're just going to draw a line from this dot start x, this dot start y, to this dot end x, this dot end y. Okay, so when I create the shortcut, I send in its type, its starting square, so 0 to 99. So I send through where it is on the board. So if I go from 96 to 84, I send through the 96 as the start and the 84 as the end. And so what I do with those values is I go to the square 99 or 96, whatever it is, and I get the midpoint of that. And I've got the geographical midpoint, x or y coordinate on the screen of that midpoint. And I set that to be the x and y coordinate for the start. And I'll do that for the end as well. And then I just draw a line between them. Right, so now I've got to actually create them. So I need to create an array. Let shortcut list equal an array. And I have to actually go through each of the snakes and each of the ladders independently and create shortcuts for them. Okay, so now, so I sent this up as set a key value pair. So I'm going to have to do something a bit unusual now. I'm going to have to iterate over the pairs of an object. So I have to do something new here. So for const brackets, the key and the value of object dot entries ladders. Start with the ladders. So what does this mean? It's a for loop. So it means it's going to iterate the number of times or the number of entries in ladders. So if we go to ladders, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. It's going to run 9 times because it's going once for each entry in this list. What does this mean? Well, what this says is for each of these entries in ladders, pull out the key and the value. So down here, I could go console.log key, comma value. And so this should print out 313, the key value, and then 830, and then 137, and so on. So I should be able to access each of these pairs as I iterate over that object. So we'll just go and prove that. So over here, we'll go to here, and now we've got them. Now they've been sorted by the operating system, by the interpreter into numerical order, but there I actually have all of those entry and exit points for all the ladders and things. So that's how I can do this. Okay, so now I've got hold for the key and the value. So I'm going to create a new shortcut. So let new shortcut equal new shortcut. It needs a type. So the type is a ladder. It's a starting point, which is the key, an ending point, which is the value. And then I need to push that into the list. Push new shortcut. And I'm going to copy this and paste it again. And do the same thing, but this time I'm going to go through the snakes. And call it a snake. So now I have all of the snakes and ladders in an array called shortcut list. So I can actually prove that. So I can shortcut is not because I didn't actually include the file. That would have been potentially useful. Shortcut JS. Okay, now I'm going to shortcut list. And it's got 19 shortcuts. So it's got all the ladders and it has all the snakes. Now, as I'm looking at this, it's just checking the data came through properly. So it pulled the start in as a string, but it did create start X and start Y for all of them. Okay, so we were good. We're good. The next thing I probably want to do is draw them. So I just did a draw line. So I'm going to draw the shortcuts after I've drawn the squares because I want the shortcuts drawn on top of the squares. But I might pretend I don't know how many shortcuts there are. So I'm going to do a for let I equals 0 while I is less than shortcut list.length I++. So this will just work out how many shortcuts or snakes and ladders in total there are and just run that many times. So shortcut list. So whichever one we're looking at, we're going to get to draw itself. And now I've got them all drawn. So it looks good. Except I can't tell which is which is bad. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my shortcut.js and I'm going to make some changes. Okay, I'm going to go if this.type is equal to a ladder. I'm going to stroke. I'm going to set it to yellow. Else stroke. I set it to red. So everything's red or yellow. I don't think yellow is a good choice. I'm going to make it green. But everything's those colors now. So I'm going to go back to square. And before I draw a square, I'm going to set stroke to black. Actually, I'm going to set stroke weight to 1. And here I'm going to set stroke weight to, say, 4. Okay, so the green is obviously the ladder, and the red is a snake. So it might not be pretty. At this stage, I'm not going for pretty. I'm just going for functional, and later on I can make things prettier. So this is good. Now I've got all my snakes and my ladders showing up. I can go back to my mind map and think about my problem. So I've got the grid's done. I can't move yet. The shortcuts are done. So I suppose I need to. We've got the shortcut locations. We've got to start dealing with the player. So next little video, we're going to make a player.